UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back with you on this Monday morning, the 6th of April, 2026. It's a pleasure to be back. Yesterday, we did not have a night broadcast, as I had told you that I would be away for Easter Sunday night. And yeah, so we are back. We should have come much earlier, but morning Monday blues were taking me quite speedy. But anyways, we are back to this morning to see what, to review what did transpire in the continued extension of the weekend. For everything that did happen on Saturday, we had managed to look through during the Saturday night broadcast. For those of you that were able to be a part of the conversation, really. That's a live one of the best live broadcasts that we've had on the channel. We had a very, very lengthy conversation, very fruitful conversation in that regard. It was so good that it lasted 2 hours. Ordinarily, our lives, will go for 1 hour, 1.5 maybe, but that one lasted 2 hours and a couple of minutes. So for those of you that were part of it, thank you so much. We cannot take your love and support for granted in that regard and respect. For those of you that spent the weekend watching some of our content under the video section, under the shorts section, and revisiting some of our live broadcasts, thank you so, so much. So, So thank you for taking the time. We appreciate you a great deal. And yeah, we are back yet again on this beautiful Easter Monday. So happy Easter Monday to you all. Enjoy yourselves. Continue relaxing because the hustle goes on again tomorrow. So yeah. Okay. This morning, we'll be talking about the FA Cup results. From the weekend, we had some really, really dramatic results. We saw a dramatic 2-all draw between West Ham United and Leeds before Leeds United clinched it 4-2 on post-match penalties to qualify for their first ever semi-final of the FA Cup in 39 years. So there's that conversation. We'll be talking about that. Then we'll be talking about we'll be talking about the FA semi-final draws that were conducted. We'll go and talk about the Spanish La Liga title race because Barcelona are now 7 points clear on the summit of the table. We had a chat about that on Saturday, but no less we can have a review of that. So for those of you that are just joining us, I say welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is my name, and it's 27 minutes past the hour of 10 a.m. here in Kampala, Uganda. Kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel if it is your first time here. Allow me to have our audios tested just to make sure everything checks out before we move on with this morning broadcast. Otherwise, I wouldn't want us to misfire. It's happened to us on multiple occasions that I did speak to my audience without realizing that my audios were not at their very best. So it does help when we have the audios tested before moving on. So yeah, but I think we're in the clear. So anyways, in regards to the FA Cup, yesterday I saw West Ham recover from a 2-0 deficit in extra time, sorry, not in extra time, but in added time to win a game of football. And, okay, not win, but get back in action. They almost won that, but they were so lucky that they had goals ruled out for offside. They had, because one, I think, had been scored by Castellanos. Then you had, you had Gerard Bowen, very, very unlucky on the day. I don't know, I think twice or thrice hitting the woodwork. Hi, Pedri, how are you, Mr. Tribe? I think you're 37. Not really, not yet there. But maybe, hopefully one day, God willing, granted the good health, I will make it to that age someday. So, but not yet there. So, but thank you so much, Pedri. Now, Pedri, I want your submission on that reversed red card against Barcelona. Was it Gerard Martin? I mean, give me your honest opinion of it. now that you won the game, you've had the chance to review the incident multiple times. What's your honest opinion? If the roles were reversed, would you rather have that yellow card be reversed? So I just need your insight on that. So okay, so yeah, the quarterfinals of the FA Cup wrapped up yesterday with West Ham United being knocked out at the London Stadium at the hands of Leeds United, who won the tie on post-match penalties that preceded a 2-all draw after extra time. Very, very dramatic sort of game. Like I said, Leeds United looked sharply the better side in terms of executing their own opportunities, and they did go through with Tanaka's 26th minute goal. I took a deflection, I think, off the foot of what's his name, the Axel Disasi. That's the Chelsea defender unknown to West Ham. It took a deflection off of him before hitting the back of the net, beating Alfonso Areola in goal, and it was 1-0. And then we thought, anyways, anything can still happen in this game. And then in the 75th minute, Dominic Calvert-Lewin converts from the penalty spot to sort of give Leeds the 2-0 lead in that game. And I was thinking to myself, well, the tie is as good as done and dusted. Maybe it's just a formality that we see out the remainder of the 15 minutes and whatever at the time there will be. That's what it looked like, because it didn't look like it was going to be the sort of day where West Ham had their luck to their sides. However, as the case always is with football, never say never. You can never rule out anything. Anything can still happen in a game of football, and basically that's what it was. We play on to 90 minutes and it's still 2-0, and I'm thinking to myself, Leeds just need to see out this one. Even if West Ham pull one back, it doesn't look likely that they are getting themselves back in this one. And yet somehow they managed to conjure out something, because Matas Fernandes lashed onto a ball that went off the upright that was struck by Phil Foden. It came back into play, and he lashed onto that one to score, to make it 2-1 at the time. And this is in the 3rd minute of stoppage time. Remember, 11 minutes have been added. And I'm thinking to myself, since there are 11 minutes added, perhaps we have quite a game on our hands. And that indeed was the case. And 3 minutes later, Axel Disasi was scoring, I think, off of the cross floated in by Adama Traore. And it was 2-2. Dramatic, right? So, I mean, that's where football will stand you. That's where football will give you all the full emotions of it, in the way you got them yesterday, in case you are paying allegiance to any of the two sides. But even if you are a neutral, you must have enjoyed that. I think, especially if you're neutral, you actually get to enjoy it more, because don't we all love a comeback? Don't we love to see a team that is sort of struggled through the game in a way, scrap themselves back in it? And that's what basically West Ham did. And then in the 1st minute of extra time, Castellanos goes ahead and scores. And we thought, wow, comeback complete. 3-2. But then that goal was stopped by VAR. There was another goal, I think. Yes, but it was scored from an offside position. And that one, the linesman really saw it straight away, so it could never count. Nuno Espirito Santo, very much disappointed on the touchline, as could be any other West Ham fan. And then once it goes to penalties, this is the thing I always say about penalties. If a game is involving any of the teams that I support, I hate penalties. Why? They can go 50-50. It doesn't matter who is very good at it or bad at it. It can just go either way. In any case, you need a reminder. Go back and watch those penalties between Bosnia and Herzegovina against Italy. Go and watch those penalties between Denmark, and it was Denmark and what? So that's how penalties can be. And yesterday is not different. Now, Gerard Bowen, outrightly, West Ham's penalty taker, and oftentimes converts. This time around, steps up and he misses. Pirou on the other side for Leeds also misses, and then we think, okay, well, maybe it's going to be that kind of penalty shootout. But then Karu Capitas, I think, scores, and then you had Thomas Soucek and Pablo miss their penalties, as Leeds United clinched it 4-2 on post-match penalties that proceeded extra time. So, and there it was, Leeds booking themselves a spot in the semi-finals of the FA Cup for the first time in 39 years. Quite remarkable for Daniel Fakir, their manager, in that regard. Okay, let's get to some of these comments from Pedri. He says, I was reading that Kampala, Uganda, is the dirtiest city in the world. I don't think so. I don't think so. Somebody made that, was asked on a podcast about their view of cities. There's some travel guy. I think he's traveled quite a number of cities, and in his opinion, Kampala is the dirtiest. That's his opinion. I understand where his opinion comes from, but I don't think it's entirely true. I've not had the opportunity to visit all cities, but from what I've seen on travel vlogs, I wouldn't pass Kampala to judgment as the dirtiest city. In any case, anyways, we are trying to make strides in the right direction in terms of improving. It's not like we're not dirty. It's a dirty city to a good extent, but maybe not the dirtiest, I would say. So then I would say, and by the way, these days, they're really, really making good strides in terms of trying to clean the city. I don't know if you've had the chance to watch some clips. These days, they are washing the roads, the streets. They're doing the best they can to repair some potholes and stuff like that, work on certain roads, etc. The road markings and paintings have been sort of redone in some parts of the city to try and give it that sort of beauty that you'd want to have it. But no less, it is a fact that some parts of the city are really, really dirty. That I cannot disqualify. Okay, you say, I think it was a red card, but they did the same thing earlier last year, so it equals now. Now, Pedri, I do not. Now, you make a very good point on the part of acknowledging that you think it is a red card. But for me, the part where you continue to say they did the same thing last year, I do not want to take it that way, because let's agree, two wrongs do not make a right. So, but I was really, really stunned because it's given as a red card. Then for some reason, the referee is being asked to review the incident on the VAR. And once he reviews it, I don't know what prejudices him, because what he's seen in real action is the same thing that he sees. Yes, Gerard Martin gets the ball, but that fall through to the ankle really, really looked nasty and ugly. So I do not know his justification of reversing that. But all day long, that's a red card for me. I've seen people get red cards for much, much less. For those of people that were part of the Saturday night broadcast, I mentioned this about Gabriel Martinelli. Very late on in their 2-1 loss against Southampton, Arsenal win a free kick, and in trying to rush to have a ball restarted, the referee is standing there. Martinelli shoves the referee as if to say, give way, we need to have a quick restart. And the referee, with all his calmness, blows the whistle, picks his yellow card, and shows it to Gabriel Martinelli. I said, if I were the referee in his shoes, Martinelli was getting a red card for that, because there's no justification for a player pushing a referee in that moment. Because I looked at and I'm thinking, if the ball was in action, like ball in play, and then somehow you come across the referee and you push him out of the way, I'm with you on that one. But this was so blatant. It almost felt disrespectful, And I think I saw some former Premier League referee speaking about it, and he is equally of the view that he should have been sent off. So, anyways, where Atletico should have had a red card on Bueno in November. So, yeah, but he only got a yellow card. That's what I was saying. Two wrongs do not make a right. Penalties are not 50-50. If you have a good penalty goalkeeper like Kelleher or Emiliano Martinez. Again, they are good goalkeepers. And in any case, you remember the Netherlands goalkeeper, Tim Krul, back in the 2014 World Cup when he was brought on very late on for that former Valencia goalkeeper whose name does elude me. Now, I understand you can have a very good goalkeeper for penalties, and you can have very good penalty takers. But how many times have we seen somebody take a good penalty, goalkeeper goes in the opposite direction, but somehow that ball goes off the upright or hits the crossbar, Yes, Jesper Selensen, yes. I understand that. So when I say it's about fortunes, you can have the best of penalty takers in a penalty shootout like that, miss out. So for me, they're a 50-50 in the sense that they can go either way, On a given day, you can have a goalkeeper looking very, very good, serving the spot kicks. At the same time, or on another given day, you can have all your best penalty takers fumble it, either under pressure or something. Two, you can have the misfortunes of simply hitting, the woodwork. I've seen that multiple times. So for me, that's why I say 50-50s. And that's why I hate them, especially when any team that I pay allegiance to is playing, really. That's where I come from with that one. Oh, is the guy Australian? Luke Damat. I'm not sure if he's Australian or something, but I remember watching the clip. He was being asked sort of quick fire questions based on his travel knowledge, and then depending on the question, he would give a city that he would relate that with too. I don't know if you've seen, if you watch enough travel vlogs, a lot of people have described Kampala as a place of organized chaos. With organized chaos, what do they mean? That you will find that it looks chaotic, especially with borders. You can go and, if you have some time, Google borders in Kampala and look for videos. You'll see in that crowd of it, it looks very disorganized. It looks chaotic. But somehow, because people manage to ride and drive through it, it looks organized for them. So in a way, so they describe it as organized chaos. But thank you so much, Pedri. You say, you know what? It is not a red card. This is because the athletic player did not have full control of the ball. Hence, it is considered a foul with no play, no ball, because it occurs when the ball is hit. Now, again, I'll say this based on precedent of the things I've seen. He hits the ball, that's true, but the fall through and because it's not like when he hits the ball, he then stamps on his foot. It's a boot in the tackle, and it makes it no less a foul. Like I said, I've seen red cards dished for match days. For me, my humble opinion is that that's a red card, and the referee shouldn't have reversed it. But anyways, we'll leave it at that. So yeah. Okay, moving on. So we know that in terms of the FA Cup quarterfinals, Arsenal got eliminated by Southampton by 2-1 at St. Mary's Stadium. Manchester City obliterated Liverpool or humiliated them, beating them by 4-0, but Erling Haaland scoring the hat-trick in that one, while Antoine Semenyo was the other on target. Then Chelsea put 7 past Port Vale. Players like Jorel Hato, players like Joao Pedro, Alejandro Garnacho, Andre Santos, Estava, Cole Palmer, who else were all on target. The defender, Tosin Aderabio, were all on target as Chelsea went on that 7-0 rout against Port Vale. Now, with that said, or done and dusted, yeah, we did have the semi-final draws, and these have pitted Manchester City against Southampton, while Chelsea will be up against Leeds United. Those semi-finals will be played on the weekend of the 25th and 26th April. That's later this month, which then implies that we are going to have a reorganization of fixtures or a rescheduling of fixtures. That's and I think Newcastle could be one of those teams impacted. I don't know, because match day, let me see, it's going to be match day 33. I think it should be match day 33 of the Premier League, around that, during that weekend when some of these fixtures are supposed to be played. Because we have match day 32 next weekend. Then after that, we will have match day 33. It will be match day 34, I think, for that weekend. So on that weekend, okay, no, Newcastle won't be impacted because Newcastle will be up against Arsenal in the late kickoff. So the teams that will be impacted, Manchester City, Burnley, that game will have to be rescheduled. Then the Chelsea game against Brighton will have to be rescheduled. Then Leeds United are also in the semi-finals. That means they will have their game rescheduled. Leeds was set to play AFC Bournemouth. So those are the 3 games that are going to be impacted in as far as the match day 33 Premier League schedule is concerned. I don't know whether there will be whether they will be played earlier on or later on. The beauty of it is that none of these teams are playing in European competitions like the Champions League, UEFA Europa League, as well as the UEFA Conference League. Therefore, Leeds United and versus AFC Bournemouth, FC Bournemouth versus Leeds United, that fixture will be rescheduled, as well as the game between Burnley and Manchester City, and as well as that of Brighton versus Chelsea. So expect those fixture schedules in as far as the Premier League calendar is concerned as we draw closer to the end of the season because of the FA Cup semi-finals. So those are the two games that will be played at Wembley Stadium on that weekend. So we should expect now. Ideally, I would have loved for Leeds United to be pitted up against Southampton and Chelsea to be pitted up against Manchester City for the semi-finals. And for me, the reason for that was that I would have loved to see an underdog in the final. It's not to say that we are not going to see an underdog in the final, because it can still happen that Leeds knock out Chelsea or Manchester City collapse against Southampton. However, there's a possibility we could have a Manchester City versus Leeds final. There's a possibility for that. We know for a fact that Leeds have already beaten up against Chelsea this season by 3-1 at Elland Road, and then they forced Chelsea into a 2-2 draw at Stamford Bridge in the Premier League. Therefore, Leeds are yet to lose a game of football against Chelsea this season. So it could go either way. So I'm thinking, if Leeds can do a number on Chelsea and then Man City go through against Southampton, then we could see Manchester City versus Leeds in the final. And therefore, Manchester City are going to be on course of a season double. And yet, there's still a Premier League title race to chase, which is bringing or sending shivers down the spines of the Arsenal fans, who are really, really up in arms about their team, about Mikel Arteta following that result against Southampton. Nonetheless, I say to you guys, dust yourselves up, summon your energy or courage or faith, whatever it is you can summon it, and go again, because on Tuesday, Arsenal have a very, very difficult opponent in Sporting Lisbon. That game is going to be away in Portugal. And the worst thing that can happen to Arsenal is having a negative result in Portugal. Whether it's a 1-0 loss, whether it's a 2-0 loss, a 2-1 loss, whatever anything qualifies for a loss, would be really, really, really a very poor result for the Arsenal. Because this is where your mental fortitude is supposed to help you. How you deal with this situation mentally or psychologically, this is where it's supposed to help you, because the loss against Southampton was an extension of their loss against Manchester City in their last outing in the finals of the Carabao Cup. So imagine what a loss would imply against Sporting CP in the UEFA Champions League. Of course, different competitions, different opponents, but losing, I think, would be detrimental to the Arsenal. And that's why that fixture is a must-win. Not because drawing or losing implies that they are knocked out of the UEFA Champions League straight away, but because of what it means for them psychologically for the rest of the season. So that's that's going to be the implication of that game. So pick yourselves up and fight on. Otherwise, Manchester City will be breathing down your necks going forward. So anyways, then in terms of Manchester City, I said this. Manchester City, I think, in these cup competitions, and particularly for the remainder of the FA Cup, they're not playing like a team that is under pressure of anything. In any case, whatever happens to them between now and the end of the season, in securing that Carabao Cup title, they rid themselves of all the pressure that you would imagine or assume would weigh on their shoulders. Why? It's a season that they are not going to go trophyless. 2, Pep Guardiola has constantly hammered up on it that we're a team in transition. We are not where we want to be, and therefore, I'm not surprised that we're not competing at our best levels. So there's that. So he sort of preempts whatever external pressure you'd want to put on his team. Therefore, in winning anything that they win, it sort of looks like a bonus. I'll give you an example. If Chelsea had gone trophyless last season, okay, if Chelsea had only won the UEFA Conference League last season, I don't think anybody would lay blame on them because they are building their own project and it was Enzo Maresca's debut campaign. But in winning the FIFA Club World Cup, that was a huge bonus for Enzo Maresca and for the Chelsea project in terms of confidence building, in terms of buy-in for most of those players in regards to where the project is going. So when you look at Manchester City as a team in transition and that are going to continue on this journey of transition, going away from that treble winning squad and into this new sort of team where you have the likes of McKay, Anton Semenyo, Omar Mamush, you have Kushanov, and Nico Gonzalez, all these sorts of players that have been brought in, Ryan Chucky, etc. Of course, Victor Reis, currently on loan to Girona, will be returning this summer. You have all that component. And we know for a fact that Bernardo Silva is going to be leaving the club at the end of the season, in the summer. So that means after 9 seasons, he will be exiting. And therefore, they'll go to the market and try and find a replacement. I do not think there is a player of the effectiveness and goodness of pound for pound Bernardo Silva. But you can find the right fit. And I think Elliot Anderson could sort of tick that box in a way, depending on how you deploy him. Then we know that there's enormous reports making the rounds that Rodrigo Hernandez Cascante could leave Manchester City at the end of the season. It's his decision to make because there's interest from Real Madrid. And should Real Madrid have the cash to spend on him and he is willing to move, Manchester City are not going to stand in his way, even though they have tempered contract talks with him to extend his stay at the City of Manchester Stadium or the Etihad Stadium beyond the summer of 2027, for which his contract runs out. So there's that. In other words, we know that the likes of Ederson Morales, having exited Kyle Walker, Kevin De Bruyne, all those players gradually exiting the club, previously Riyad Mahrez, Ilkay Gundogan, etc. So you have a team that is gradually transitioning into a whole new team, and it's no less similar. It's no less different from what Jurgen Klopp was doing at Liverpool. You remember by the time of his last season, which was the 2023-2024 campaign, he had already brought in all these sorts of players: Darwin Núñez, Luis Diaz, Cody Gakpo, McAllister, Dominic Szoboszlai, Ryan Gravenberch. It is, to try and rebuild that team from the Sadio Manes, Roberto Firmino, Fabinho, Gini Wijnaldum, Jordan Henderson, that kind of team, and Arne Slot is a continuation of that. Only that for Arne Slot, in his debut campaign, he managed to win a Premier League title. So for Pep Guardiola, we are yet to ascertain what his fate is going to be. Is he staying beyond this season? And if he stays next season, is he getting handed a new contract? Does he stay beyond next season? Or he is thinking to himself, I'll see out my contract and then kiss this badge goodbye. But how I sign out is going to be very, very important. Therefore, I must be chasing big pieces of silverware, the Premier League title and the UEFA Champions League going into next season. So there's that to think about. So the point I'm trying to make is that the expectations on this Manchester City are largely based on their historical performances and Pep Guardiola's reputation as a manager, as a coach. But they're going to go through these final games of the season with very, very little pressure. If Manchester City do not win the FA Cup, I don't think anybody is going to come down with a sledgehammer to criticize Pep Guardiola. Like I said, he has nothing to prove. Manchester City as a team have nothing to prove to the world. They've done it all, apart from the new faces that have been added in, Gianluigi Donnarumma, etc. They have nothing to prove to the rest of the world. Pep Guardiola has nothing to prove to anybody else, So he's already sort of outperformed any expectations that he may have had, if you had any expectations for him anyway. So this season, everything else they get is a bonus. First of all, they are guaranteed they're going to qualify for Champions League football next season. They already have a piece of silverware. they are into the semi-finals of the FA Cup. So if you put out their deal sheet and say, let's assess the performance of Manchester City this season, I do not think you're going to be giving them Fs and maybe E's or D minuses. In any case, you'd have to be really, really harsh to even give them a D plus. So I think the minimum you can give them is a C minus or a C plus. That's where I think about them. Because look at the Champions League. Yes, they exited at the round of 16, but against who? Real Madrid. May not be the best Real Madrid, but there's a reason they are the most successful team in European competitions. Then you look at the Carabao Cup. They've won that one, so that's an A plus. Then you look at the FA Cup. As we speak, they are into the semi-finals. That's already a B minus. Actually a B plus, because if they get knocked out, it's still a B plus. If they qualify for the finals, it's an A minus. If they win it, it's an A plus. So, in that sort of grading, that's how I look at it. When you look at the Premier League title race, when you do the mathematics, I think they will land wherever they land. Whether they go on to win it or finish second, again, unless you're being overly critical, is where you come out with the sledgehammer, which I think you do not ought to come out with in regards to their performances this season. Pedri says we are going to we play Champions League to them on Wednesday. Yes, that's true. And Atletico de Madrid versus Barcelona again, or Barcelona versus Atletico de Madrid, in as far as the UEFA Champions League is concerned, next season. It's going to be, this season or midweek, is going to be quite the epic encounter, really. First of all, because of what happened in the weekend, there's going to be sort of, you see, when you feel an injustice has been committed against you and you come up against the same opponent, oftentimes that you feel as a source of injustice is going to act as a motivating factor for you to sort of put up a more spirited fight against that particular opponent. Whereas it does not guarantee that you will come out on top, it still gives you a chance, or it still gives you the sort of motivation that you would be looking for. And for Atletico de Madrid, that kind of decision, not that it is finite, but it should be giving them the motivation going into that game against Barcelona at Camp Nou. Now, Camp Nou is a very, very hostile environment to go to for any team, whether you're a Real Oviedo, whether you're an Espanyol, whether you're a Real Madrid, whether you're an Atletico de Madrid, whether you be a Bayern Munich, whatever, or a PSG. Think of yourself as any team in the world. I do not think there's a team that comfortably or confidently walks into the Camp Nou without shivers down their spine. Let's hope for the best. And in hoping for the best is that for Atletico de Madrid, they must do anything in that fixture to avoid an embarrassment. An embarrassment would be losing by more than 3 goals. But 2, beyond the embarrassment, they must limit the damage. In any case, if you're at Atletico de Madrid, if you're to lose that game, make sure you're not losing it by more than a goal's margin, because that would be the start of your downfall. In other words, if you lose 2-1 or 3-2, that's reasonable to take back that kind of tie back to the Riyadh Air Stadium in the reverse fixture for the subsequent week. So Diego Simeone, whatever his calculations are, that should be the standard. I did appreciate their discipline when they're down to 10 men, how well they defended, because it wasn't until the 87th minute that Robert Lewandowski sort of, finally breaks them to win that game for Barcelona by 2-1. Other than that, they had maintained a very good discipline. They had done really themselves well or proud, might I say. So it will be interesting to see how they behave in that fixture next week, in as far as the UEFA Champions League is concerned. So those are games that we'll continue to talk about in the coming broadcasts. We do have our routine weekly broadcast at 11 p.m. tonight, then Tuesday morning, and then I'm hoping if the situation does favor, we will do a watch along for those Tuesday and Wednesday games. That's if the situation does favor me to be able to start the broadcast at 10. That's an hour early when those games kick off, because they will kick off at 10 p.m. East African time. That's 1 hour earlier than they have been usually kicking off at 11 p.m. because of the time changes. However, should that not be the case, we'll start our broadcast at halftime, thereabouts, or in the second half, at the start of the second half. So that's my hope for those UEFA Champions League games. But the other game, on Tuesday, we have Real Madrid against Bayern Munich, Sporting CP against Arsenal, and then on Wednesday, Barcelona versus Atletico de Madrid and PSG versus Liverpool. We'll try and digest those games. In fact, maybe I should consider doing a preview for those. How do you guys think? And then we have a video out. Maybe. Let me see how my day goes, because I do have a bit of a tight schedule today. So that's what really transpired over the weekend in as far as the FA Cup was concerned. But just to digress a little bit back, that victory for Barcelona against Atletico de Madrid by 2-1 was really detrimental to Real Madrid, because they had lost their game earlier on against Real Mallorca by 2-1, which meant that the victory for Barcelona sent them 7 points clear at the summit of the Premier League. Sorry, at the summit of the La Liga table, with Rashford scoring to cancel out Simeone's goal, and then with Nico Gonzalez getting the red card, then Gerard Martin having his own yellow card, sort of reviewed and then reduced to a yellow card. I still do not understand why that was the case. I did not think, first of all, that it was a clear and obvious error by the referee to award the red card in the first place. Now, VAR are supposed to intervene in red card situations, but only if they deem it a clear and obvious error by the referee, which wasn't the case. So that's been a big debate. In Spain, I've been following up on some conversation or on X in certain fora, and that's been a big talk from the weekend. And I think multiple examples were cited in terms of what was given as a foul, what wasn't as given as a foul. Of course, depending on what side of the aisle you stand, if you're a Barcelona fan, you're going to find a way to defend that instance. If you're an Atletico de Madrid fan, you're going to find a way to defend that. So really, I mean, we'll have to wait and see. Then you look back. By the way, you look back at the foul that Fede Valverde makes to get himself sent off, and draw comparisons, not similar in fashion, but which one is more heinous? This one did look, even though he gets the ball. So that's my opinion on that. Anyways, so Real Madrid got beat, and because they got beat, Barcelona did themselves the necessary favor. Real Madrid were 1-0 down for quite some time. That because they conceded at the tail end of the first half through Molanes. He scores and it's 1-0. Then they wait until the 88th minute. That goal scored by Eder Militao, thanks to the brilliant corner kick floated in by Alexander Trent-Arnold. And then I'm thinking to myself, okay, Real Madrid, come on, let's grind this one out. Fight your way back and win this one. Then in the 91st minute, Moriki scores and it's 2-1, and we were dead in the water. Nonetheless, I think when you look at the Spanish La Liga table, first of all, I wouldn't say we've outperformed ourselves, but for me, Real Madrid has performed beyond expectations, at least my own expectations, in as far as this season is concerned. When the season was starting, my prediction was Barcelona will defend the Spanish La Liga title, Atletico de Madrid would come second, and Real Madrid would come third. I don't remember making the prediction for the fourth, but we did have Pedri, whose prediction was that it was either going to be Villarreal or Real Betis or Real Sociedad fighting for that fourth place. As we speak, Real Sociedad are far from it, and Real Betis are a little far from it because they are 12 points adrift of that place. Nonetheless, Villarreal are in the mix. They are a third. on the La Liga standings. And the reason as why I thought Real Madrid would struggle throughout the season is because, one, they're going to have they were never going to have a good preseason because of they had to play in the FIFA Club World Cup. Therefore, they would not get the ample time to work through their own drills with Xabi Alonso as a new head coach walking in. And therefore, going into the new season, he was going to always need time. He had to grow into the season slowly but slowly. A season that we have seen has been sort of defined by so many injuries for this Real Madrid side, especially within their backline, etc., etc. So them being second, that I did not expect. I remember at the start of the season, they were winning games, but they did look very, very unconvincing. And eventually, they got exposed. They had, I think, a spell where they had about 3 consecutive draws and, things like that. So with 8 games left to play, Barcelona have built them a 7-point lead. And there's no reason to believe that it cannot become more, just as much as there's no reason to believe that it cannot be reduced. However, my hope was that by the time we get to the El Clasico, which will be played on March the 35, in as far as the Spanish La Liga schedule is concerned, we would have Real Madrid at least just a point, or keeping it at 4 points, or even lesser behind Barcelona. Now, if we dare get to that position, and it will be meaningless beyond bragging rights if Real Madrid were to win the El Clasico. I would have wanted it to mean so much more with the Spanish La Liga trophy on the line. You remember back in 2014 when Atletico de Madrid were winning the Spanish La Liga title, I think it went to the wire and they needed a point away to Barcelona to secure the title. And they went and did just that. So they won it. So I would have loved it to go down to the wire, because let's assume we would go into the El Clasico with Barcelona only 4 points ahead, and then Real Madrid win the El Clasico. That means that regardless of what happens in the next 2 games, if both teams, not regardless, if both teams keep on a winning trajectory in the subsequent 2 games, it would then imply that we go into the final day with Barcelona still leading that with a point, and that they must win, not even just draw, must win their final game of the season if they are to guarantee winning the La Liga title, while Real Madrid would also have to win their final game and hope that Barcelona draw or lose if they are to have the La Liga title to themselves. So I would have loved that sort of scenario, to play out that way. But all wishes are not horses, and that's why it is what it is. Anyways, away from the Spanish La Liga title, Inter Milan continued on their winning ways, and today there's plenty of games, but Inter Milan won over the weekend as they beat Roma by 5 goals to 2. Roma, they are losing so badly. I mean, Lautaro Martinez returning to the team, scored a brace in that one. Then you had Chanalolu score a brilliant goal. Guys, if you did not chance yourself into watching this game, I encourage you to go and look for those highlights for the Italian Serie A. Go and look for those highlights. You'll find them online, or at least on YouTube or somewhere, and watch them. Hakani Chanalolu's goal was a beauty to watch. Then Marcus Thuram scored a header, as well as Nico Barella scoring, I think, his second goal of the Spanish La Liga, of the Italian Serie A this season, and then they won it. Then Gianluca Mancini scored for Roma, as well as their captain, Lorenzo Pellegrini, but those turned out to be mere consolations on the day. So, and Roma were beaten, and therefore, that means that Inter Milan extended their lead at the summit of the standings from 6 points to 9 points. And therefore, AC Milan must win if they are to reduce the deficit. With that game played, that means Inter Milan have 7 games left to play, because that was match day 31, which does continue today with plenty of games to play. Now, I did appreciate it that there were not too many games played in the Italian Serie A. Only 3 games were played. Bologna winning away to Cremonese by 2-1, while Torino beat Pisa by 1-0. So I think it was due to their respect for Easter or something. Now, in today's fixtures, of course, Girona take on Villarreal at 10 p.m. East African time. That's in the Spanish La Liga. While in the Italian Serie A, we will have Udinese against Como. Como really pushing down for that top 4 finish. We're going to have a quick snapshot look at the sort of standings within the Italian Serie A, but they're pushing for a 4th place finish, which could qualify them for Champions League football. I was watching a story, I think filed by the BBC, about this Como team and what they are to the sort of Como area in Italy. And with their sort of small old stadium, they are looking to foster sports tourism or football tourism as part of the pillars of the club's success, because they know they do not have a lot of financial resources to go and splash the cash in terms of spending on big players. But with these improved performances, then club merchandising, then sports tourism, they can help generate more resources for the club and compete favorably. But trust me, Cesc Fabregas, soon rather than later, as already has been the case, is going to be a highly sought after coach. We know that over the summer, Inter Milan were interested in his signature, although he declined and he chose to stay with Como. He's a part owner of the club with Thierry Henry, among other people. So yeah, they have a stake in the club. So he's the one guiding the club through. I did understand from that from that news report that he's been sort of given the headroom in terms of decision making to determine what happens with the club or at the club in terms of footballing decisions. So that game will come at 1:30 p.m. Then at 4 p.m., Lecce will be up against Atlanta. Juventus at 7 p.m. take on Genoa, while Napoli will be up against AC Milan at 1:15 to 10 p.m. Must be a very interesting game. Should be looking forward to watching that one, Napoli against AC Milan. And we see how Massimiliano Allegri does fare against Antonio Conte at a time when Romelu Lukaku refused to return to training with Napoli, and the club has threatened sanctions or taking disciplinary action against the 32-year-old Belgian international, formerly at Inter Milan, formerly at Chelsea, Man United, Everton, West Bromwich Albion, and I think, was it Anderlecht, where he was signed from by Chelsea many years ago. So yeah, that's what is to come in as far as the Italian Serie A is concerned. Now, first of all, the game between Napoli and AC Milan is a very crucial game. Napoli won the first leg. Sorry, Napoli lost the first leg by 2-1. That was a San Siro. The two sides met in the Italian Super Cup, and Napoli won the tie by 2-0. So there are some scores to settle. But then, when you look at the Italian Serie A table, if Napoli win this game, they move to second place with 65 points. If AC Milan win the game, they stay second with 66 points, only 6 points adrift of the leaders in Inter Milan. In other words, for the best of both worlds, Inter Milan will be praying for a draw, because that means that everybody stays within their current place with just a point cut off their 9-point lead. If the worst is to come to the worst, then Napoli should be winning that game, will be the prayer for Inter Milan, in that sort of sense, because those are the top 3. And in 4th place is Como with 57 points. Now, Como are going to be looking forward to winning their game today to move to 60 points. They really need to win that game to move to 60 points. And if they can move to 60 points by beating up against Udinese, it would really put them in a very strong position to qualify for Champions League football next season. Nonetheless, Juventus are going to be in action against Genoa at home at the old lady. The old lady will be thinking, if we can win our game, if let's say they'll be hoping that Como lose and then they win and then they move level on points with Como. But Como doing very well. They even have a far superior goal difference of a +8 compared to Juventus in comparison, because Como have a goal difference of 31 and Juventus have 23. So that's the sort of context within that, or where you should think of that as well. Then what else with that? So Juventus are 5th and AC Roma are 6th. Atlanta are 7th. So that's the context of the Italian Serie A table or standings, and in regards to where it is headed. So the Spanish La Liga title race and that of the Italian Serie A looks like have been in a way deflated by the recent results. You'd be hoping for better. The story in the French League One is slightly different, because after Paris Saint-Germain's victory on Friday, beating Toulouse by 3-1, Ousmane Dembele scoring the best in that one, and Goncalo Ramos. No, not Goncalo. I think Gonzalo. Is it Gonzalo? I think Goncalo Ramos. Yes, scoring in that one to win it 3-1 for PSG meant that PSG had moved within 4 points above RC Lens on the standings of the French League One. However, that deficit was not reduced following the results from the weekend. Meanwhile, PSG still have a game in hand. You remember they had a rescheduled game prior to their Champions League fixtures against Chelsea. So what we had over the weekend, in as far as the French League One is concerned, is you had Monaco. AC Monaco. AC Monaco beat up against Marseille by 2-1. Le Havre 1-1 against Auxerre. Lorient and Paris FC 1-1. 2 goalless draws between Lyon and Angers, as well as Métis against Nantes. Then you had Lille beat up against RC Lens by 3-0. Brest lost to Rennes 4-3. Strasbourg beat Nice 3-1. So that's for the weekend, and of course that result for PSG. Then so action will continue next weekend, but the standings so far will show that you that PSG are leading the way there with 4 points now, and those 4 points are very they're huge, especially bearing in mind that they have a game in hand. So if they can, presumably they go ahead and win that game, it will be a 7 points difference. And if PSG are leading you with 7 points, and remember in the French League One, it's 18 teams, therefore they play 34 games. That means they will be left with about 6 games left to play. So trust me, anything can still happen, but I think Luis Enrique looks capable of retaining his French League One title. Excuse me. So, yeah, all that is happening there in the French League One. In the German Bundesliga, the story wasn't any different. Bayern Munich managed to beat up against Freiburg. I think it was by 3-2 in the weekend. Again, the kind of results that you would expect, really. I think we are the only team that have beaten them this season, because they beat them by 2-1, I think, in the first leg. But you had a 2-2 draw between Frankfurt and Cologne. Union Berlin against St. Pauli, it was a 1-1 draw. VfB Stuttgart lost to Borussia Dortmund by 2-0. Bayer Leverkusen put 6 past Wolfsburg. It ended 6-3. Borussia Mönchengladbach and Heidenheim was a 2-2 draw. Then you had the 3-2 victory between Bayern Munich and Freiburg. In that one, you had Tom Bischoff scored a brace in that one, as well as Leonard Karl, who won it late, by the way, for Bayern Munich, because that game was 2-1 actually was 2-0 by the 81st minute. Then Tom Bishop scores the 81st minute and it's 2-1. Then in the second minute of stoppage time, he scores again and it's 2-2. Michael Olise, by the way, providing the assist for the second goal, while Leonard Karl had provided the assist for the first consolation. And then Leonard Karl, assist provider, turns goal scorer in the 9th minute of stoppage time to win it 3-2 for Bayern Munich. And of course, the game wrapped up that way. Quite a dramatic kind of a game. And the kind of, I don't say the kind of drama you'd want to watch, but I'm sure those that watched the game must have really enjoyed that kind of drama on the day, as especially Bayern Munich fans. You know, it's very good when a team that is as strong as Bayern Munich, compared to all the other opponents in the German Bundesliga, sort of come up against a team that gives them quite the challenge. Especially, it's a very unconvincing result, in my opinion, bearing in mind that their next fixture in the UEFA Champions League is going to be against Real Madrid, a team that they often struggle against, you know, a team that has a very good record against them. But the other results included a 1-1 draw between Hamburg and Augsburg, while Hoffenheim, as well as Mainz, Hoffenheim were beaten by 2-1. Werder Bremen lost to RB Leipzig by 2-1. So those were the other results, and the standings are no less different from what you ordinarily have, with Bayern Munich retaining that 9-point lead at the summit of the standings, with about 6 games left to play as well. They have a goal difference of 73. That's how impressive they've been thus far this season. So you really, I think the writing is on the wall, as the expectation always is at the start of any season, that Bayern Munich are going to fly away with the German Bundesliga title. But for me, players like Michael Olise have been really tremendous. Michael Olise, you have, of course, Harry Kane has been sort of in and out of the team recently through niggles and, injuries. So, but Michael Olise has a 29 goal involvement in 26 games. He has 11 goals and 18 assists. That means he's 1 goal contribution away from making it 30. You remember when we did that video on the channel about players that Liverpool can look onto as replacements for Mohamed Salah, and we put Michael Olise number 1? It was for a reason. Those statistics should tell you as much as you need to hear. I think in the UEFA Champions League, he has about 3 goals and 4 assists, thereabout. I stand to be corrected on the exact figures, but should be around that ballpark. So, and he's still young, only 24 years of age. He does turn 25 in December, and he's just hitting his prime, and his numbers show that. And if you go back to last season, the story just has to continue, because last season he has already surpassed his overall contribution from last season, because last season he scored 12 goals and provided 14 assists. That was a 26 goal contribution, and he's already at 29 this season. So with 6 games still left to play, so you can see how brilliant he is been, and how consistent he is proving to be. And this is his second season with Bayern Munich. So yeah, in the Champions League, 3 goals and 4 assists. That's a 7 goal contribution, as many as he had in the entirety of last campaign, where he played 14 games, and this season he has played 5 games less already at this stage of the competition. So if they are going to have any good result against Real Madrid, he has to stand tall. He has to really, really stand tall. Not just him, but with the rest of his teammates, but he himself needs to grab the ball by both horns and take it on and show us that he is really, really capable of big, big, big things. And which I do really think he is. I can sort of imagine if, I don't know, I do not follow much of the French press, but I would want to imagine or think that they write about him quite glowingly. But I imagine if he were in the Premier League, trust me, every story, news story that would be filed about him would end with something in the insinuation of being in contention for the Ballon d'Or, because his numbers are really, really, really impressive, really. So, anyways, guys, it's been a pleasure doing this with you. Thank you so much, Pedri, for your contribution to today's discussion and debate. For those of you that have been done in the comment section, those that did like the broadcast, those that did not like, but still managed to spare time to be with us, thank you so much for having chosen to be part of this Sam Mornings podcast. It's always a pleasure to have your contribution. Keep supporting what we do. Go to the video section, watch all that content. Go to the live broadcasts and watch, those broadcasts that have long since ended, and keep supporting this channel to greater heights. So allow me sign out, and I wish you a wonderful rest of the day. I will be back tonight for our night broadcasts to discuss what there is to come in the world of football or any news that will have surfaced. But we could be predominantly looking at those previews for the UEFA Champions League games, because action comes tomorrow. If I do find the time, I may do the preview for a recorded video, but it's a bit of a tight schedule for me today. So in case it doesn't come, please be kind enough to understand that I was unable to pull that off. Otherwise, have a blessed day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye for now.